Picture an island so small that most people would pass it without a second thought, yet so powerful that it became one of the most debated and most important places in Philippine history. On one quiet Easter Sunday in 1521, something happened there that would echo across centuries, shaping faith, identity, and memory in ways few could have imagined. For generations, people have argued about what really happened on that shore, who stood there, and why that moment still matters today. But hidden inside that question is a story far bigger than a single event. It is the story of how a nation remembers its beginning. Before we dive into the story, click on the subscription button, like, comment, and share this video. The year was 1521, and the world was still being redrawn by explorers who believed the ocean could lead them to wealth, power, and places no European map had ever fully captured. Ferdinand Magellan's expedition had crossed brutal waters, searching for a path that would connect continents and trade routes. When the fleet reached an island called Limasawa, now identified by historians as Limasawa, they found more than shelter. They found an island that would become part of a historic turning point, one that linked the Philippines to a global story of exploration and religion. What makes this moment unforgettable is not just that a mass was celebrated there. It is the atmosphere around it. The event was held on Easter Sunday, March 31, 1521, and officiated by Father Pedro de Valderrama, the expedition's chaplain. Around him stood seafarers, local leaders, and island communities, watching an unfamiliar ceremony unfold. For the people present, it was not merely a religious gathering. It was a meeting of worlds where different languages, beliefs, and ambitions briefly shared the same ground. That single gathering carried a meaning that stretched far beyond the island. In later years, it would be remembered as the first documented Catholic Mass in the Philippines and as an early milestone in the spread of Christianity in the archipelago. But history rarely arrives in one clean line. It arrives in fragments, journals, testimonies, maps, and disagreements. And that is exactly why this story has remained alive for centuries. The facts may point in one direction, but the debate around them reveals how deeply people care about where history begins. One of the reasons this story has lasted so long is that the sources from 1521 were not written for modern readers. They were travel accounts, expedition notes, and observations from men trying to survive a dangerous voyage. Still, historians have returned again and again to those records, especially the writings associated with the Magellan expedition, to understand the route, the location, and the sequence of events. From those traces, many scholars and institutions have concluded that Limasawa is the historical site of the first Mass. But history often becomes more dramatic when memory enters the room. Another place, Butuan, has long been part of the discussion, with some arguing that the first Mass may have happened there instead. That dispute turned a historical question into a public conversation about identity, recognition, and local pride. For some, this was never only about geography. It was about which community deserved to stand closest to a defining moment in the national story. And once a question touches pride, it stops being just academic. This is where the story becomes especially compelling, because the debate itself tells us something important. History is not only about what happened, but about who gets believed when the evidence is incomplete. Different interpretations emerged from the same past, and each side tried to prove its case through documents, route descriptions, and historical reasoning. Yet, despite the arguments, the National Historical Commission of the Philippines has long recognized Limasawa as the official site associated with the first Mass. That official recognition did not end the conversation, but it gave the story a strong historical anchor. Still, the power of this island goes beyond the question of location. Limasawa became a symbol of arrival, encounter, and transformation. It represents the moment when the Philippines entered a larger colonial and religious era, one that would change its culture, institutions, and beliefs for centuries. Whether one views that change as spiritual awakening, foreign influence, or both, the significance of the place is undeniable. A small island became a marker in the long journey of the Filipino people. Think about how strange history can be. A place that many people barely know by name becomes unforgettable because of one day, one ceremony, and one set of travelers crossing the sea. Yet that is how memory works. It attaches itself to physical locations, turning ordinary land into sacred ground. Limasawa is not famous because it is large or wealthy or crowded. It is famous because it became a witness to a turning point that still lives in textbooks, church history, and national discussion. The scene itself must have felt fragile and powerful at the same time. A wooden altar was prepared. The Easter Mass was celebrated. A cross was planted afterward, marking the expedition's presence and the symbolic weight of the moment. On the surface, it might have looked like a small religious ceremony. But in truth, it was the opening chapter of a much larger transformation. In time, Christianity would spread throughout the islands, eventually becoming one of the defining features of Philippine society. And yet, even with all that change, the island remained quiet. No grand city rose from that exact moment. No empire announced itself in a single day. Instead, the importance of Limasawa grew slowly through memory, scholarship, and the desire of later generations to understand where their history truly began. That slow growth is part of what makes the story so powerful. It reminds us that the most important places are not always the loudest ones. Sometimes they are the quiet ones that history cannot stop returning to. The Limasawa story also reveals how nations protect their memory. Over time, historians, institutions, and communities examined the records again and again, trying to separate legend from evidence. Each new review sharpened the argument that the first Mass was held on Limasawa not as a matter of pride, but as a matter of historical method. That careful work matters, because history becomes stronger when it is tested, not just repeated. For viewers today, the story feels relatable because it is not really about ancient people alone. It is about how we all ask where our beginnings are. We want to know where the first step happened, who stood there, and what changed after that. In that sense, Limasawa is more than a location. It is a reminder that every nation has a starting point people return to when they want meaning, direction, or identity. It also shows that history can be contested without losing its value. The Butuan-Limasawa debate did not weaken the story. It made it richer. It forced Filipinos to look more closely at sources, interpretations, and the role of official memory. And even if the question seems settled in official records, the discussion continues because people care deeply about the truth of their past. That is what gives this story endurance. It is not frozen in time. It is still being interpreted, defended, and remembered. At its heart, the island story is about a meeting that changed everything. A fleet arrived, a ceremony was held, a cross was raised. And from that moment forward, the Philippines' history would never be read the same way again, whether viewed through faith, politics, or national memory. The event remains one of the most significant in the country's past. The island may be small, but its place in history is enormous. So when people ask what makes Limasawa important, the answer is not simply that a mass was held there. It is that the island became the stage for one of the earliest recorded moments in the nation's encounter with Christianity and the outside world. It became a place where history stepped onto the shore and stayed there forever. And that is why, even after centuries of debate, the island still holds a kind of quiet power that refuses to fade.